Hey guys, welcome back. So today I want to start something a little bit new with you guys that we can do on the regular, specific plant care guides. So today we're going to be talking about Hoya Obovata. It's a plant that I've been growing for quite some time. Let me grab her. Here she is. Oh my, she's quite viney. But here she is. I'm trying not to knock my microphone too much for you guys, but this is the plant we're going to be talking about today. I do want to do this, like I said, fairly regularly with you guys. So I do already have a little list of some other plants that I want to do this video for, just going over what I found to be some of the easiest and the best care that I have found, at least for these specific plants, and that's going to be going over light, soil, feeding. We're going to be going over all kinds of stuff for these plants. So today, like I said, we're going to be doing the Hoya Obovata. So let's just get started. Like I said, this is a plant that I've been growing for quite some time. Look at her. She's just big, bushy, and beautiful. Oh my goodness. And I would say that most of this growth happened when she was in a grow tent, which unfortunately I'm not able to set up in my current situation, but hopefully one day soon, maybe not so soon, but hopefully one day we'll be able to get that set back up, and she'll be able to go back in there and be like in her, what seemed to be optimal environment. Like she was just popping off like crazy. I will say I haven't had any blooms or peduncles or anything like that yet on this plant, but hopefully one day. I have only ever had one Hoya bloom for me before, so you know, I'm not holding my breath, but I love this plant for the foliage. So yeah, actually before we get too deep into care, let's just look at her and appreciate her beauty, shall we? So this is what the Hoya Obovata looks like. It's got those beautiful round leaves. That's where she gets the name. And this one in particular is a little bit splashy, not crazy splashy. Like, what's a good leaf to show you? I did hose her off in the shower because she was mighty dusty, and that is something that we're going to be covering today. This guy, we've got some nice splash on there. Hopefully you can see that okay. But yeah, so this is my Hoya Obovata splash, I guess you could call it. There is a variegated version of this plant as well. I don't have that one, unfortunately, yet, but there are definitely some other planty YouTubers that do have this plant variegated that are absolutely gorgeous. Not Dude, I believe, on YouTube and on Instagram. I will pop his Instagram here so you can see his stuff if you want to. It definitely has a fantastic channel, super informative as well, especially on Hoya. So if you're really starting to dive deep into Hoya, that's a great resource for you. And he has a fantastic, super splashy, variegated version of the Obovata, and it's just like to die for. My plant here, I think, is just lovely, and she started to get these like really beautiful, crazy aerial roots going off here. If you see all those little leggies poking off the vines, it's just so beautiful. So as far as care on this plant, let's go ahead and start off with watering first. No, actually, let's start off with light. I feel like that's always a big kind of weird one with this guy. So I have found that Hoya love light. Now I know that they can, I think, maybe technically be epiphytic plants. Oh, I feel like that's wrong. I feel like that might just be anthurium. I'll look that up and put that on here if these are epiphytic or not, and that just means that they would grow like on trees in nature and stuff like that and not necessarily need a soil substrate to grow in. They can just grow on something else. But these plants, I have found, really enjoy a high amount of light. When this guy was in my grow tent, he was in really, really bright light. He was pretty close under my Spider Farmer SF600 grow light, which is fantastic, by the way, if you're looking for like a pretty decent priced, really powerful grow light to put in a grow tent or something like that. It's a really, really good option. Like, I highly recommend it. I did at one point have a discount code. I doubt it's active anymore, but I'll look for it, and if I can find it, I'll put it on here for you so you can try. But yeah, this guy grew like crazy under the light. I will say I would recommend going a little bit slower to acclimate your plant to the higher light. When I put this guy in the grow tent, he had been getting fairly high light, but definitely not the amount of light that he was getting when he was in the grow tent with like the reflective walls, the super high light. So you can see on some of the leaves here, they're a little bit bleached out, and that is just from acclimating to the brighter light. I found that this plant, the Obovata, is not a Hoya that sun stresses. Let me know if you have a different experience in the comments below. I'm super interested to hear because I was definitely hoping that it would sun stress. I thought it would look really pretty, but it just got regular stressed. So, you know, that's okay. It is what it is. It was only a few leaves. I do want to say I lost... Oh, I hope I'm not knocking my microphone a ton. I'm so sorry if I have been. But I do want to say I lost a couple of leaves that just went like completely yellow and I had to pull out of there. But honestly, all in all, it acclimated really well once I moved it into the higher light. I would just suggest doing it a little bit slower. So by that, I mean, I would start by just like setting it on the floor in your grow tent at first. I had it like on a pretty short hanger, just hung up from the top rack, and probably only, oh gosh, probably like less than a foot away from the grow light. I was going to say from the grow tent, but it was in the grow tent. But yeah, probably less than a foot away from the grow light. And like I said, it's a powerful grow light. So I just kind of had him getting blasted like 8 to 12 hours a day, 10 to 12 hours, something like that. And he did take it really well, but yeah, I would start by setting it on the floor of your grow tent or whatever your situation is, setting it a little bit further away at first, especially if you are using like a really banging grow light like I was. Start off by setting it a little bit further away, and then just kind of after a week or two, slowly kind of move it a little bit closer to that light if you want to. And it just started growing so well. I think it really enjoys bright light. If you can get bright, a little bit indirect light, I wouldn't just put this straight outside in the sun like immediately. I would put it under like a shaded porch for a while and acclimate it that way, and just see how she does. I feel like she would do fantastic outside, but I love looking at her every day, so she's gonna stay inside for me. But yeah, if you wanted to put this outside for the summer or something like that, depending on where you live, you definitely do that. Like I said, just acclimate it, and I think she'll do fabulous for you, especially if you live in a humid area, which we'll get to shortly. But yeah, otherwise for light, I would say if you can get nice, bright, indirect sunlight, she's going to be a really, really happy plant for you. I feel so out of breath. Oh my gosh. I have had a beer. Well, first, I had a smoothie with some gin and some pineapples, so a pineapple gin smoothie. Yeah. It's a Sunday. We're living it up. I'm also working on a Modelo. So... maybe not the best idea, but it's a Sunday. We're relaxing. I've got Looney in bed in front of me, just sprawled out, relaxing. Six Toe is not in the bedroom, actually, surprisingly enough. He's in my dad's like little travel loft, I think he calls it, where he has like all of his travel trinkets and photos and stuff all over the walls. And Six Toe loves to hang out in there. It's like the boy zone. It's really, really cute. But yeah, he's just sprawled out in there with his head like tucked into a pillow. So he's just, everyone's being cozy today. But anywho, I had one more thing on light. What did I want to tell you? Oh yeah, another thing that's really going to help your, ooh, I guess I'll hold her up. She's kind of heavy. I watered her pretty recently too. She's not like dripping wet from the bottom, but she's pretty heavy right now. But anywho, another thing that's really going to help your Hoya Obovata bring in that light, or be able to soak in that light rather, is if you keep the leaves cleaned off. Now, like I said, she looks a little bit damp right now, and that's because she is. I did give her a good thorough not very gentle soaking off in the shower. Like I used like the setting, you know what I'm talking about? The kind of like super jet setting. And it's fine. It's a super tough plant. If you have one of these, you'll know what I'm talking about. But the leaves are so thick and sturdy, like they're totally fine. Especially if you've already watered it like I have. I wasn't trying to like hit the soil or anything like that, just trying to get the leaves hit nice and good. I don't know what I was trying to say there, but yeah, you're definitely going to want to keep your Hoya Obovata leaves clean and dusted off as best as possible. I feel like I said that so weird. Oh no, that beer's hitting me a little bit. But yeah, you want to keep the leaves as dust-free as possible. And not only is that going to help your leaves be able to soak in, or your plant rather, well, the leaves of the plant be able to soak in and photosynthesize better. It's also going to help you with pest management. So I guess that kind of leads us right into pest management, hey? Yeah, that's not what I had in mind mentally, but let's do it. Pest management. So nothing special for these guys. I would say I would just check them on the regular, as I would say to do for literally any other plant. This isn't one that I have found. Oh, come on now. Come on. Okay, thank you. It's not one that I found to be especially pest prone or anything like that. There definitely are plants that I would say are pest prone. I don't think the Hoya Obovata is one of them. Like I said, let me know what your guys' experience is in the comments below. If you think this is pest prone, if you've had a lot of issues with it. I personally have not. I have had one bout of spider mites with this guy. Knock on wood, that's it so far. But yeah, that's it, just one bout with spider mites, and it was really easy to get treated. Like honestly, I think I just spit. Much easier than a lot of other plants that I've had to treat with spider mites. This one just, it was like, okay, no worries, we're gone. We're out of here. You want us gone? We gone. And it was lovely. It's fantastic. So I love this plant. I just try to check on it pretty regularly. Like I said, giving it that good spray down, it really, really helps just kind of like wash away anything that's going on there. So you just kind of like, you know, kill what is that sad saying? Kill two birds with one stone. There we go. Who came up with that? But other than that, for pest management, if you do like a pest spray or anything like that, I wouldn't be too worried about spraying it on here and leaving it on and not washing it off. I don't think I really wash off any of the pest spray that I've ever used. I've always just left it on here and I've never had any adverse effects. It's always been totally fine. I don't have any spotting or anything like that. Sometimes that can happen if you have more sensitive leaves, like a more velvety leaf or something like that, or just like a newer leaf. But I think honestly, I'm pretty sure that even the smaller leaves, like the newer leaves that I've sprayed with pest spray, even like the more serious pest spray, haven't shown any bad effects whatsoever. Like any sort of weirdness on there is just from past pest issues. Other than that, it's just been totally fun. Like, look at this leaf. What? How can I show it to you without breaking it? Look at how perfect. It's like such a perfect little circle. It's like a little cookie. One more thing under pest management is just I wouldn't be afraid to use like a super tough, strong pest spray if you are having like a major outbreak or anything like that. I think you can hit this guy pretty hard and he's going to be just fine. If you are really worried, I would just wash it off after you're done and let it like soak in or whatever and dry. Then wash it off if you're really worried or if that's what you're using calls for. Obviously, go by the directions. But yeah, this guy is a pretty tough one. I found a dead leaf, you guys. Look at it. I wonder how old that is. It was at the very base of the pot. It's like very degraded. That's an old one. That's impressive. I honestly can't remember the last time I lost a leaf. It had to have been, it must have just been when, like shortly after I put this plant in the grow tent, which must have just been shortly after I got that grow tent. That was a while ago now. It's probably like a year ago. Something like that. I have no concept of time, honestly, like zero. Okay, anyway, moving on. Let's start talking about watering. So, watering, I feel like, oh my god, you see that fully go into my mouth? I feel like watering is another one of those things for Hoya especially that can kind of go one way or another. They can either be like super, super tolerant or like they really need their stuff when they need it. This is a plant that I have found to be very, very tolerant of both like major drought and also a little bit of overwatering as well. Although I'm definitely not one to overwater unless you would consider waiting way too long in between watering and then the soil being really hydrophobic and then just like dousing it with water and letting it sit in like the nasty water for a really, really, really long time, like a week, and then the roots rotting, then yeah, you could say overwater sometimes. But most of the time I'm an underwaterer, mostly just because I have so many plants and I'm always moving at 1,000,000 miles a minute for sometimes no reason at all other than just pure anxiety. So I tend to just like water really quickly sometimes and not always super thoroughly. On top of that, sometimes I'll wait a really, really long time in between waterings. So all I'm trying to say is my very long-winded way of getting to it is that the Hoya Obovata is a really, really hardy, I was going to say tough plant, then it was going to come out hardy. Man, I'm struggling, you guys. But what I'm trying to get at here is that the Hoya Obovata, at least in my experience so far in the well over a year that I've had this plant, is that this plant is super hardy, is really tough, very tolerant to drought, very tolerant to really a lot of different conditions. I've had this, like I said, in definitely a lot more dim light conditions. I would say now it's even in a little bit darker conditions for some of the day, and it's doing absolutely fine. It's still popping out a bunch of new growth fairly consistently. And oh my God, can you not, buddy? And she will try and grab onto anything and everything. So it would like a trellis if you can give her one or something to do something with. But as far as watering goes, I would say to definitely water this guy when it's about all the way dry. I try not to let them get too crazy dry in between waterings because, I mean, honestly, nothing like crazy detrimental has ever happened with this plant. Like I said, very tolerant, but I do like to keep that growth going as consistently as possible. So like the worst thing that will happen for me if I just really forget to water and I'm just like really neglecting her is it'll just stop growing. That's pretty much it. Like you'll just see nothing happen. And then once you start feeding her and giving her water, she starts growing. So let's go ahead and talk about fertilizer along with watering, because I personally do it all in one. For a while now, I've been pretty darn consistent, good for me, about fertilizing every single time that I water, because I just put whatever fertilizer I've been using, no matter what it's been, I just put it right into my watering can or watering vessel. It's not usually a can, it's usually just a pitcher, but you know what I'm saying. I put my fertilizer right in with my water, so I do it 2-in-1, and I don't have to worry about fertilizing them because then it's done. So I do it every time I water. I do use a more diluted amount usually than whenever it's called for. I will like half it, or sometimes if I'm just starting to use something and I'm a little bit more nervous, I will use just like a quarter of whatever is suggested. But honestly, with this last fertilizer that I've purchased, I just went ahead and just went for it. I just used like the full amount. I think it called for 8 pumps or 6 pumps, and that's pretty much what I use. And I haven't had any bad effects on any plant so far. So this guy included, he's been really enjoying it. I think it's just, it's time. It's the growth time outside, and it's definitely the growth time inside as well. And another thing I want you guys to think about too, especially if you are like me and you're utilizing grow lights indoors, is that the growing season is really all year round if we want it to be. So don't feel like you can only fertilize a few months of the year. If you're utilizing grow lights indoors, grow season is all year. So keep on fertilizing and your plants will keep growing for you all year. So that's what I personally like to do with this guy. Yeah, super easy. I will say, oh my God, she's getting really heavy. Woofda. Can you still see her? Hopefully you can still kind of see her. I will say this plant isn't a very talkative plant, if you know what I'm saying. It's not one where the leaves will really droop down or really show you visually that they're super thirsty. They will maybe start to curl in a little bit. That's usually with like the newer leaves because they're already a little bit softer. But these leaves are super, super thick, so you won't usually see that unless it's like really, really thirsty. I don't think I've ever gotten to that point, which is pretty darn good. That's really saying something for this plant. But you will start to see a little bit more like veination. Like I said, I watered this plant pretty recently, so I don't have any good examples of that, but you will start to see a little bit more of that veination that is within the leaf that you can't see like really at all right now. There's like a slight indentation of where that veination would be, but you'll really start to see that get more pronounced, and that's kind of a telltale sign that, okay, we're getting time. We're getting a little bit thinner of a leaf. It's time to water. But I would just start to pick up your plants. That's my biggest advice to get to know your plants, is pick up your pot. I hope I'm not hitting my microphone too much. I'm so sorry if I am. I know I already said that, but like, she's a wild one. But one of my biggest pieces of advice to kind of get to know your plants is to pick your plant up. I mean, you can only do that with like the reasonably sized plants, but most of us have plants that are a small enough size that we can easily pick the pots up. So if you can, pick your pot up after you've watered it, pick your pot up a few days later, pick your pot up like a week later, and then pick your pot up when you feel like you can visually tell that your plant is like saying that she's ready to be watered. Pick your pot up again and see what it feels like. See how light that feels in comparison to how heavy it felt when you first watered it. And that way you'll kind of just get to know. And then if you're not sure visually by looking at your plant, just pick it up and see how it feels. If it feels really light, go ahead and give her some water. If it feels like, okay, we're really heavy, go ahead and wait for a few more days and then check again if you think that you might need to water it. But yeah, that's a really great way to get to know your plants. That's like my favorite thing to do, to see if I can't already tell just by looking at the soil. If I can't tell by the leaf, is just to pick it up. It's so much easier, and you can almost always tell right away. Sometimes it's deceiving, and I will say for Hoya especially, because like this kind of leaf, like I said a million times, is super thick. It's really heavy, so it kind of makes like the whole pot feel super heavy. So, you know, you just have to kind of get used to it, like I said, and you'll know within, you know, a few weeks. You'll know what it feels like. Or maybe a month. Give yourself a month. You'll know what it feels like. Another area I want to cover for the Hoya Obovata specifically is going to be the soil mix. So I have tried the Hoya in a few different soil mixes. When I first bought it, it was in like a sphagnum, or no, excuse me, a peat moss mix. It wasn't a mix. It was just straight peat moss. I kept it in that for a while until it got acclimated to my house, and then eventually repotted it to honestly, it probably wasn't much better than the peat moss that it came to me in. It was just a pretty bland soil mix with just like probably some Miracle-Gro soil and maybe a little bit of perlite mixed in there for aeration, and that's about it. And it grew okay. Like just okay, nothing crazy. Eventually I moved it up to a different pot and moved the soil up to a nicer mix as well. So I put in a bunch of more perlite and a ton of orchid bark as well to really kind of like chunk up and beef up the soil mixture. And I have found that it really, really enjoys that. The plant's able to kind of work the water throughout the whole pot a lot easier. The roots are also able to breathe a lot better as well. I think that this plant really enjoys that. You can tell, I mean, we've got a ton of aerial roots popping off all over here. I feel like the roots like to have a decent amount of air for this plant, so a chunky soil mix really lends itself to that. So I definitely recommend using a chunkier soil mix rather than a more dense mix for this guy. Again, let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Do you think I'm on the right track? Do you agree with me, or have you got a completely different experience? Because like I said, I am just about one person on the internet talking about my experience with this plant. So I definitely want to hear what you guys think down below in the comments, and let me know what other plants you want me to cover. Like I said, I have a little list of some other plants that I like to go over, but let me know if there's anything specific, and if I don't have the plant already, maybe I'll have to start looking for it and see if I can find it for cheap to free somewhere, grow it for a while, get you some info, and then make you a video. But let me know down below, and I will see you guys in the next one. I'm not gonna lie, I am a tipsy. Should I put a warning in at the beginning? Was this really hard to watch, you guys? Tell me now. I hope not. If not, do we have to do some tipsy videos later? Is that bad? Is that promoting drinking? I'm not saying it's a good thing. Okay, bye.